Great. Let's move to elasticity. Again, this is the second most important or favorite subject for any interviewer. And this is of utmost importance for any economics. So let's try to understand the elasticity in the easiest possible way. We all have used something like a elastic, with something that stretches, right? And this is the exact reason why we have elasticity in economics as well. So let's try to understand this elasticity. What happens is we apply a force and we see that the length of the band changes, right? We call this elasticity of length of band. And we say, if we use it in the correct nomenclature, it's called force elasticity. So we are applying force elasticity of length of band, right? That's what is happening here. And you will see that depending on the length of the band, so if the band length is very small, you need to apply a lot less force for it to stretch. But if it is already stretched, then you need to apply a lot higher strength to stretch the rubber band again. So the amount of stretch in this rubber band depends on the length of the rubber band. These are two important things that you need to know for now. First is applying a force will change the length of this. And second, the amount of length that is being changed depends on what is the current length of the band. If the length of the band is very small, we can apply a small force and it will get displaced by a delta L. But if the length of the band is very big, like if it's already stretched, then we need to apply a lot stronger force to stretch it further. This is exactly what is defined in price elasticity of demand. This basically tells me, if I use this with this nomenclature, this says me that if I change the price, right, how much demand will change. So it's again very important for any business. I want to know what is the elasticity of 100 percentiles, which means if I increase the price from 4,000 to 5,000, how much of my demand will change, how much my demand will decrease, or if I decrease the price from 4,000 to 3,000, how much my demand will increase. And this is basically what is elasticity of my business. So this basically means simply that if we are changing the price by some percentage, what is the change in the quantity, right? Which is delta P upon P. This is a percentage change in price, and delta Q upon Q is a percentage change in quantity, right? So that means, let's say if again we look at this particular graph, which is the price of 100 percentiles package or GDPI course and number of students on the x-axis, then I'm saying that if I am at this point, right, if I change the price by delta P, if I change the price by 1%, right, how much of my demand will increase or decrease? And that will be my elasticity. But like I said, elasticity depends on the length of it. So actually in this case, it will depend on where we are calculating my elasticity. So if I calculate at this point, then my elasticity will be different. If I calculate at this point, my elasticity will be different. For example, if my price is 10 rupees, if I increase it to 11, ideally my demand will not change. So if I'm offering, let's say, the course at just 10 rupees and I have 1,000 people enrolled, even if I increase it to 11 rupees, I'll still have those 1,000 people enrolled. That means at very low points, it's almost that my quantity is not changing with price. That is, elasticity is zero in that case. If I change the price by 1 rupee, my quantity is not changing. This is called, if elasticity is zero, it's called inelastic. A best example of inelastic thing is cigarettes. So people are addicted to cigarettes. Everyone knows that. That's why if the prices of cigarettes increases from 12 rupees to 13 rupees, ideally what they see is people who are buying cigarettes will always buy cigarettes, and they will always buy the same brand of cigarette if it increases by 1 rupees. Similarly, let's say there's an antibiotic or antibody, or let's say there's some medicine, important medicine, and there's only one medicine like that. If I increase the price of it, still, if there are 1,000 people buying it, they will buy it because it's like a life-saving drugs. So in case of life-saving drugs, or in case of cigarettes and alcohol, these are inelastic. That means the elasticity is zero. That means even if I increase or decrease the price, the quantity will not change. So in this curve, like I said, it depends on where I am. Ideally, if I am at this equilibrium point, then if I increase my price by X percentage, my quantity will go down by some percentage. That change in percentage of quantity by change in percentage of price will be my elasticity. Any questions on elasticity? Again, one of the favorite terms of a CAT interview. What is elasticity? What is unit elastic? What is inelastic? So unit elastic means that eta that we see here is actually 1. So if I increase the price by 1%, my quantity will go down by 1%. Always remember, elasticity will always be negative, because we know that price and quantity are inversely proportional. If I increase the price, the quantity will go down, right? So inelastic means, so unit elastic means elasticity is -1. That means if I increase the price by 1%, my quantity demanded goes down by 1%. Inelastic means there's no effect of change in price. That means eta equals to 0. If eta is more than 1, we say that it's more than unit elastic. So if my business, if in my business there's very high elasticity, so even if I change the price by little, my quantity will change a lot. Ideally, I will not try to increase my price. If you try to understand that, we'll cover that next. But let me know if you have any question on what is elasticity, how to measure it, what is unit elastic, what is inelastic, why are cigarettes inelastic, why does elasticity depends on which point on the curve we are calculating it. I hope all of that is clear. Great. Again, one of the questions, why are cigarettes taxed so heavily? And government, so cigarettes will cost you hardly 2-3 rupees, but government will have a use tax that will make it 12 rupees, because they know that even if they tax it 100%, 200%, 500%, because it's an inelastic thing, cigarettes are inelastic in nature, people are still going to buy it. So there's no decrease in demand. So they can increase it to as many percentage as possible because it's an inelastic. But like I said, it depends on where on the curve we are. For example, if I increase the price of cigarettes to 1,000 rupees, obviously we'll see that some people will stop using cigarettes, right? So right now, if the price is 10 rupees, if I increase it to 15 or decrease it to 5, the quantity demanded will remain the same. But if I increase too much, then we'll see there's some drop in demand. But ideally speaking, cigarettes, alcohols, life-saving drugs, these are examples of inelastic demand. So in the interview, people like interviewer may ask you examples of inelastic demand as well. Okay. Next question. Can brand name and loyal customer change the elasticity of demand? Like having a, so why do people build their brand name? That's a big question. The reason why people do that is because if your brand is very high, if your brand name is very high, you will see that even if you increase or decrease the price, because you have loyal customers, people will still buy it. So if the iPhones are priced at 80,000 today, if the new launch is 90,000 or 1 lakh, more or less same people will buy it because of its brand value. So that's why people build brand value, because it makes their business inelastic. So if tomorrow, let's say 100% is a brand, ideally what it will mean is that if I increase the price to 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, still the same number of people will come to me. So that's why people build a brand name, because it yields loyal customers, and that changes the elasticity of demand and make it more towards zero. That is inelastic. Again, not perfectly zero, but very close to zero. And that's exactly what all business wants. They want their product to be inelastic. Right. Few terms that are asked in the interviews. Okay. Right. Let's move on to next term, which is income elasticity of demand. Again, remember this thing. You'll understand what is income elasticity of demand. This means that if your income increases by X amount, right, how much more of my product will you buy? So today, if you're earning 1 lakh, if your income increases by 10,000, right, then if everyone's income increases by 10,000, then how many more people will buy my course? That would be my business income elasticity. Very important factor for me. So again, we'll talk about these two things, normal goods and inferior goods. So in case of normal goods, so if let's say my product is a normal good, ideally what I'll see is if the income of people increases, right, people will buy more of my goods. That means in that case, my good will be normal good. But if the income increases, my demand goes down. In that case, that will be an inferior good. Right? Again, that is exactly what has been explained in the text here. You just need to understand what is income elasticity of demand. If your income increases, how much of, if the income of people increases, how much of my business demand will increase or decrease. So it could either be positive or negative. Like we saw in this case, price elasticity is always negative because price is always inversely proportional to demand. However, income is not always inversely proportional. Income is directly proportional in case of normal goods and inversely proportional in case of inferior goods. Okay, another question. I don't think if I have it here, right? I don't have. In what case, so let's say you want to start a business tomorrow, right? In what case would you want to create an inferior good? Like you want to create a business, ideally you'd always want to create goods which are not inferior, which are of superior quality. But in what cases will you design a product which is inferior in nature? I'll give you the answer. So like we saw that if the income of people increases, your demand will increase for normal good and your demand will decrease for inferior good. If I take the reciprocal of that, so let's say if the income decreases, then demand will increase for inferior good, right? So if the income of people decrease, the demand will increase for inferior good. So if people, instead of getting 1 lakh, they are getting 10,000 rupees now, people will start buying cheap products. So if I see that there's some country which is actually getting poorer day by day, and if I'm launching product in that particular country which is getting poorer, in those countries, I'll always want to produce inferior goods because I know that people's income will go down, and if people's income will go down, they will buy inferior goods. So demand of my inferior goods will go up. This was a mistake that was done by Nano because India is a country where income is actually increasing. So people are earning more than what they were earning 10 years back, right? So the income of Indian increased and Nano was an inferior good. That's why the demand of Nano decreased and Nano had to shut down the business. So it's always very important to know whether you want to create an inferior good in a particular country or a normal good. So the thumb rule is if the income of the country is increasing, always create normal good. If the income of the country is decreasing, always create a inferior good. And how will you know whether income of a country is increasing or decreasing? That is a question that is answered by macroeconomics. Macroeconomics tell you about the whole country. So if the country is doing good or bad, that's an answer that is given by macroeconomics, which we'll cover next week. Again, few things to remember here. What are normal goods, what are inferior goods, and how does income affect that? Any question? Are you guys able to understand? Am I going too fast?
No, this is a fairly good pace.
Perfect. Let me move on. Let's talk about revenue, right? Let's talk about revenue and elasticity, right? So in all the cases that we have read till now, you will see that there are price on the y-axis and quantity on the x-axis, and revenue is nothing but price into quantity. So if there are 20 students enrolled in the course and the course is 44,000, then 20 into 4,000 is my revenue, right? And the way you calculate revenue is basically, so for example, let's say my price is this much and my quantity is this much. Then the area under this curve, which is price into quantity, length into breadth, the area under this curve is my revenue. If my price is this much and my quantity is this much, then this area is my revenue. If my price is this much and my quantity is this much, then this small area is my revenue. And my aim will always be to maximize my revenue, right? That's what we're gonna see now. Okay, let's look at this curve. This is again a demand curve. X-axis is price, this is quantity, and this is demand curve going downwards. If I price my product at this particular level, then this is the revenue that I'll get, right? At this particular point, let's say I decrease the price by 1%. So let's say this is 1,000 rupees. I decrease the price by 1%. What I'll see is that the quantity increases a lot. And in cases like this at a lower end, if I decrease, let me again rephrase that. Right. Let's take some example. Let's take some example to understand it carefully. So let me put some text here. So let's say this is 1,000. This is 1,000. So the price is, let's say 10,000, and at 10,000 I see that there are only one people who is joining me, right? If I decrease the price by 10%, so now my price is 9,000. If I decrease it by 10%, 9,000, you'll see that the number of students that will come to me would ideally become 2. So there might be 2 people who will come to me, right? So if I decrease the price by 10%, my quantity increased by 100%, right? So change in price is little, but the change in quantity is large. That means at this point, my elasticity is very high. So if my price is very high at this part of the curve, like I said before, elasticity depends on what point we are calculating. So at this point, you see, if I change it by 10%, my quantity increased by 100%. That means my elasticity of business is 10, right? Which is huge. So in cases where elasticity is high, ideally, I would want to decrease my price. And in cases where elasticity is low, I would want to increase the price. And in case where my elasticity is actually 1, that is the point we want to price our product. And at this point, this rectangle will give me the maximum revenue. So it simply says that when you are at the elastic curve, which is this one, you should lower the price, because if I lower the price, I'll get more people and my revenue will increase. If I am at inelastic curve, which is at this point, this graph, this part of the graph, I need to raise the price. I will try to raise the price to increase my revenue. And ideally, if I raise the price up till here, this is the point where elasticity is 1. And at elasticity equals to 1, I will be able to maximize my revenue. So if my demand curve is like this, I maximize my revenue at elasticity equals to 1. That's all you need to know. So question that is asked out of this is, if you are in a demand curve, how do you decide your revenue? So it's the answer is as simple as that. I will try to price my product in a way such that at that particular point, elasticity is equals to 0. Sorry, elasticity is equals to 1. Because if it's more than 1, I want to decrease it. If it's less than 1, I want to increase it. And this is the point where I want to be. Great. Moving on, like you'll see questions like this. How does price elasticity affect the pricing strategy? Exactly what I told. You want to price it in a way that the elasticity becomes 1. If it is higher elastic, you want to decrease the price. If it is lower elastic, you want to increase the price till the point elasticity equals to 1. What is inelastic demand? You know that even if you change the price, the quantity does not change. And how can you draw the demand curve of it? Again, it will be a straight line because you're changing the price and the quantity is not changing. So it's a vertical straight line. So this is something that has been asked in interviews. For what products do you have inelastic demand? So things like cigarettes, weeds, pulses. This again not relevant. Any questions in elasticity chapter? We've almost covered 2 units today. I hope everything is clear. In case things are not clear, you have the recordings as well. I'll send you that. And you will have the PDF as well. So feel free to reach out to me with the right question.